Hi guys, welcome back. Today we would be looking at variables in Python. Now a variable could be a single alphabet and we just have to define it as a is maybe equal to 10 and I say print a and this should print the value as 10, right? So that's basically what we do. So variables could be just a single name, single alphabet. We could define them as this, and we could also define the other one as this, and we could probably could print both the variables in B, and we could display it on the screen. So if you see, variable A is 10 and variable B is 20. Now we could also do some mathematical operations on this. We could set a new variable C which is equal to A plus B and then print C, which would then give us the newer output which is 22, right? So this is about variables. But then when we're defining variables, we should always make sure that we make it human friendly, wherein we define the names in such a way that it is readable to the human eye or the person writing or reading the code. It's easy for him to recollect or recall the variables. For example, I say name is probably I take an input function and ask what is your first name. And since this is name, I would say first name is equal to this. I'll say the last name. I'll define the last name again as an input function where I ask what is your last name, and then we could do the calculations of it. So I could say length underscore first name is equal to length of first name, then length underscore second name is equal to length of the second name or the last name, right? And then I could use total length is equal to length of the first name plus length of the last name, and then print something like your name as characters, and let's see what the output is. So I'll run the same thing. It's asking me for the first name. I'll say cloud, I'll say Patashala, and this gives us an error for some reason. Now the error is because total length, right? If we try to see what is the type of this thing, we would come to know that this is an integer. If you see, it says that the class of this variable or the thing is an integer, and we definitely cannot integrate a string with an integer. So what we do is change this variable from a number or an integer to a string. For that we have to just use the function str total length. It should help us with the conversion. So I do cloud, I say Patashala, and it says it has 15 characters in it, right? So this is how the entire thing is working. Now if you see, there is a typo in the last name that I have entered, and that's the reason it's giving us 15 characters. If you would have noticed, in the previous video we did have 14 characters. So I say cloud Patashala, it says 9 and 5, and that is equal to 14 characters. If I do the clear screen, if I again say P007, it says cloud Patashala, it says your name has 14 characters in it. And if you want, you could also display the names itself. And in order to do that, what we do is first name plus there should be a space, last name space. We'll say something like this: your name, the name you entered is the name, first name space last name as 15 characters. Let's see if this even works, right? So I'll say cloud Patashala. It says the name cloud Patashala has 14 characters. Now obviously we don't have spaces in and before the entire string, so that's the reason it's really crooked. I'll clear the screen, and if I run the program again, it should give us the total output, which says your name, the name cloud Patashala has 14 characters in it. So once we know how to set up variables, we could definitely utilize these variables in the. There are some best practices that we should definitely be following when we set up variables. So we should also make sure that there are no spaces in between the variables that we defined, right? So this would definitely not be considered as a variable. We could either have we should always have underscore to define any variable, right? So that's the best practices that we have. So we should always try to avoid variables with having single alphabets, and we should also try to avoid variables with reserved words like input, print, and many other functions that are predefined in Python. The Python code would still execute, but the problem is we would not be so the indentation and the highlighting that's happening here would totally be messed up. What is this? And definitely I could say input, and this should work, but then the problem is this is not a best way of defining the variables, right? So this is always not recommended. We should always make sure that we have a different naming convention, and we don't use the default words or characters that have already been reserved for Python to be functioning upon. Cool. That's about variables. If you like the video and that it is adding more value, if you want to see more such these, please encourage us by hitting the like button and sharing the video to reach more people. Thank you so much for watching. Keep having a good time.